The fundamental question that is faced by sports is, will the industry ever allow somebody to tell the truth on the air? But I don't think that today that will ever happen again. I don't think the industry will allow it.
Dino Costa. This is Dino in the morning on Sirius XM Sports Zone, Sirius 92 XM 208.
Well, it is the gathering place. It is the home for morning sports radio across North America, around the world. Dino in the morning. This time on a Friday. It is, what is, Mr. Joshua, September 6th? Yes? Yeah, 2013. North to south and east to west and all those points in between on a 4-hour fun ride with you. To 11 a.m. I'm still getting used to this. Till 11 a.m. on the East Coast, and out west I go until 8 a.m. This is Dino in the morning. Sirius XM Sports Zone Radio, Sirius 92, XM 208. Oh, man. So, I don't know if you heard last night, if you watched the game. There's 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. The Broncos at that point are up by 18. Right? They would go on to win 49-27. But the Broncos are up by 18 at that point, 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And Chris Collinsworth, who did not have a good night in the booth, is wondering aloud what the Broncos are doing running the football up 18 with only 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And by the way, is Chris Collinsworth listening to the show right now? How much is a touchdown worth in the NFL these days? Again, he just did not have a good night in the booth with his booth mate there, Al Michaels, who must have left the booth in Denver last night thinking, if old Chris might have taken too many hits upside the head during his playing career with the Cincinnati Bengals. Andrew Kaplan is producing this humdinger of a Friday show. It's the last show of the week. I kind of feel bad. You know, we just started this thing. I mean, like I just started this thing yesterday. Boardwalk Empire, baby. Sunday, HBO. A new season begins. I don't know if I'm looking forward to that more than the slate of college football and the NFL on Sunday. Well, it's going to be a great sports weekend. It really is. 866-522-2846. Still getting used to the phones here. 866-522-2846. It was a really weird game in a lot of ways last night, you know. You saw something. Look, I've been watching the NFL. Let me see, the first real year that I can recall. Didn't I say that the first Super Bowl that I ever watched, Mr. Joshua, didn't I make mention of this during the show yesterday? That the first Super Bowl that I ever watched was, didn't I say Super Bowl V was the first Super Bowl that I ever, I think I did. I think that was the first Super Bowl that I ever watched was Super Bowl V. And so I've been watching the NFL for a very, very, very long time. And that Colts and Cowboys game back in, that had to be what, 1971 or thereabout, right? 71? So I've been watching the NFL for a very long time. I mean, multiple decades. I never, before last night, of course, saw an NFL quarterback throw for 7 touchdowns. Have you? I don't know if you did. You see the game in 1969, the last time that happened? So that, I mean, it was, listen, as a Broncos fan, of course, elated with the win last night. I don't want to put too much into it. I know that Ravens fans are waking up in the Baltimore region today, and they're kind of depressed over what happened last night in Denver. But here's the thing I'm going to say to Ravens fans, and that is this, that your team is going to be heard from. You played an outstanding first half of football last night in Denver after the delays and the lightning and the weather, and Dan Patrick, who compared himself to Mary Poppins on the field before the game, and Michelle Tafoya. I have to tell you, here's Dan Patrick. Who were the other two guys with Patrick, Andrew? It was Tony Dungy, and Rodney Harrison was the other guy?
Yeah.
And these guys are standing there, and each of these guys are standing there with umbrellas. Okay, and that's when Dan Patrick just said, I feel like Mary Poppins, and yet here's Michelle Tafoya, right? This is a woman, the sideline reporter, the useless role that women serve in the capacity of sideline reporters. And here's Michelle Tafoya toughing it out, and she doesn't have an umbrella, and the women with their hair and the makeup and so on and so forth, and she eschewed the mamby-pamby thing that the trio of the Three Musketeers there, Rodney Harrison and Tony Dungy and Dan Patrick, what they were doing on the sidelines, holding umbrellas. And so my mother called me during the game. Well, actually during the pregame, Kaplan. She calls me during the pregame, as we're waiting for we're watching the storm tracker.
Yeah.
NBC kept showing that, and we got the weather and the lightning and the rain and all that other stuff here. And so she says to me on the phone, she says, do these three idiots know that they're holding up, because the top of an umbrella, you got the metal piece, right?
Yeah.
So my mother says, do these dopes know that they potentially are putting their lives at risk by? Maybe that's why Michelle Tafoya wasn't holding an umbrella.
Yeah, probably.
Maybe she knew that the hazardous, situation that could come her way if she was holding an umbrella. But anyway, the NFL season is now here, and I've never seen a quarterback throw for 7 touchdowns. I don't know how to feel about it either. I mean, I'm going to get into the particulars of the game. There's so much to do over the next 4 hours. I don't know if 4 hours is going to be enough to cram everything in here on this Friday show. We'll see, but I doubt it. There's so many things I got to get to here before I'm all said and done, approximately 4 hours from now. I don't know how to feel about Peyton Manning throwing for 7 touchdown passes in that game last night. And the Broncos just took off in the second half, and all the momentum was on their side. And, again, after Baltimore played themselves a splendid first half and actually went to the locker room with a 3-point lead on the strength of that field goal at the end of the first half, nothing but good times in the second half for Denver, nothing but a debacle in the second half for the Ravens. But I'm not sure, again, how I feel about Peyton Manning throwing for all those yards and touchdowns and so on and so forth, because I'm the guy who continues to belabor the point that the National Football League is lacking balance on both sides of the football, and certainly it is. And here's Peyton Manning. I mean, he's on a pace to throw for over 100 touchdowns based upon one game and about a gazillion yards. And the Broncos are also on a pace to go undefeated this season. But, again, it's only one game, so you don't want to make too much of it. But you see again that it is such an offensive league. I mean, it's such the best thing to come out of that game last night, I thought. I mean this. I mean, other than the Bronco win, and I'm objectively, of course, I can talk about the game, but pleased personally that the Broncos won the game, of course. But the best thing that I can come up with concerning that game last night is that there was not, unless I'm wrong, and I saw the whole game, there was not a single penalty that was called in terms of an illegal hit. How many, can I see a show of hands across America, when Raheem Moore knocked the living snot out of Dallas Clark on that pass play across the middle? How many people were saying, well, great hit, right? But then at the same time, you've become conditioned, right? I'm sure Raheem Moore was thinking the same thing. He was looking around before he started to celebrate. Talk about celebrating early, by the way. We'll get to the Danny Trevathan stupid move that he did last night. But here's Raheem Moore, and I'm imagining he's getting up. He's looking around. I mean, I just leveled this guy. I hit him across the middle. Here comes the Ravens tight end, Dallas Clark. And the Ravens tight ends last night did not have a good night. But, he's getting up and he's saying, where's the flag? Well, thankfully, there was no flag. But I'm assuming that I'm not alone. There must have been a lot of people across the country saying, hold on now, okay, great hit. I mean, that's what you want to see. But hold on now, where's the flag? Okay, the flag wasn't there. And thank goodness we didn't see a flag. And interestingly enough, if you didn't see the piece in the New York Times this morning, I checked that. It was the Wall Street Journal, not the New York Times. I read so many damn things that sometimes I get them confused. And Mr. Joshua, did you take that piece in the Wall Street Journal? Here it is. Thank you. NFL offenses exploit a fear of fines. Teams, subtitle, teams design strategy around defenders wary of pricey big hits. And the story is done by a writer by the name of Kevin Clark. He goes on to note that last week, of course, the league settled with the 4,000-plus scumbags, the characterless, integrity-less, classless scumbags who shook down the league. And the league, of course, settled for $765 million with the players last week. Pete Rozelle, of course, as I said yesterday, would never have settled. He would have told the lawyers to take their lawsuit and shove it up their ass. But I digress. The story in the Wall Street Journal today is appropriate to what I'm talking about. I mean, this line, the way the game is played, is changing, and certainly it is. The story goes on to note that defensive players, fearful of penalty flags and hefty fines, are shying away from making big hits. Now, how's that helpful to the game of football? I mean, the Raheem Moore hit on Dallas Clark last night was the epitome of what you want to see in terms of tough, hard-nosed collision football, a great hit, a beautiful hit, a clean hit. But the story in the Wall Street Journal goes on to say that defensive players are shying away. It is changing the way that the game is being played. It is changing the dimension of the way that defensive backs, and I've got something to say about defensive back play in the National Football League in this day and age. Has it ever been worse than it is right now? I'll note this. I'll touch on this as I go on. But the story in the Journal this morning says that you've got wide receivers all over the league that are running pass patterns. They're going across the middle of the field, and offenses are taking advantage of the way that the game has been disfigured from a defensive standpoint. And offensive coordinators and teams across the landscape of the National Football League are now creating plays that are specifically designed to exploit the so-called safety rules in the National Football League. I mentioned Rodney Harrison just a second ago, part of the NBC television crew last night out there with Mary Poppins holding the umbrella. Rodney Harrison is quoted in the story, quote, "Wide receivers are crossing through the middle of the field and laughing. It's a joke," he says. Jerry Gray, the very good Tennessee Titans defensive coordinator, says that offenses are now sending wide receivers right at defenses that deploy a single high safety, which is one safety in the middle of the field. In years past, that safety would rather violently dislodge the ball from the receiver as the pass arrived, thus discouraging offenses from running those types of routes. And here's a very telling statistic. And you want to talk about the game changing. You want to talk about having a direct influence and certainly an absolute impact on what's going on with the National Football League. When you talk about the number of throws in the middle of the field in the NFL present time right now, I mean, it has risen each of the last 5 seasons to the point where the story notes in the Wall Street Journal this morning that last season there were 2,287 throws by quarterbacks to the middle of the field. That's up nearly 18% from just the year 2008. And Jerry Gray, the fine defensive coordinator with the Titans, says, quote, "Really, it's offensive coordinators that are being smart," and he says, "It does worry me." Says it worries him. The change in rules and the resulting shift in strategy largely responsible for the league setting a 47-year high in points scored per game. This is what I'm talking about. Now, again, last year, a 47-year high in points scored per game in the National Football League. And so now let me go back to the game in Denver last night, and here's Peyton Manning throwing for a gazillion yards and 7 touchdown passes. 7 touchdown passes. Now, I think some of that in the second half had to do with the fact that the Ravens were dispirited after the blocked punt by David Bruton that really kind of changed the momentum in the game. I felt what's the word I'm looking for here? I'm going to stay away from it because it's early in the morning. Irrevocably. There you go. Trying to look at, man. It's a new show and a new time. My brain it's still engaging. Oh, leave me alone, Mr. Joshua. Shut up. You wouldn't even know what the word means. you stupid bastard. Shut up. But, yeah, no, to get back on point, I don't know how to feel about Peyton Manning throwing for all those yards in the game. 49 points for the – would have been more if Danny Trevathan hadn't did you see – I mean, was that the stupid-ass move of the week? Of the year, maybe? He intercepts Flacco. He's running down the left sideline. He's going in for a touchdown, and the moron drops the football before he crosses the goal line. I mean, if the media wants to go on and on about a player who doesn't get it, will you leave little old Johnny Manziel alone and talk about Danny Trevathan? I mean, what a stupid move by him. Broncos scored 49 points. Could have been in the 50s last night. Could have been in the 50s. But I'm not, look, I know that Ravens fans are feeling as though their team is kind of, coming undone after one game. I think it's a knee-jerk reaction. It's not exactly accurate either. I think they played a terrific game in the first half. Baltimore did. And I was saying during the first half, I mean, we had Jason Page. Is that his name? Jason Cole, excuse me. That's his name, right, Kaplan, the guy from Yahoo Sports?
Yeah, Jason
Came
Cole.
on the show yesterday, Jason Cole. That's 2 errors, by the way, in the first 17 minutes of the show. So if you're keeping score at home, I had Jason Cole on yesterday, and we're talking about this NFL season. And I said, look, I can't find anyone who is optimistic about the Ravens. I mean, I'm picking the Bengals to win the NFC North, the AFC North. But this is a good football team. I know Pitt is not there, and I know that Ed Reed's not there, and I know that Ray Lewis retired, and so on and so forth. But this is a resourceful, resilient football team, and I thought in that first half I was duly impressed as those two teams went to the half yesterday. I mean, if you were going to give the lion's share of the better play to one team or another, I think that Baltimore got the nod in the first half. And but things kind of went, the Broncos' way in the second half, and I don't think that Baltimore is done by any stretch, even though they had never allowed more than the points that they allowed last night in the entire history of the franchise ever since they were moved to Baltimore out of Cleveland. Look, I think that there are some optimistic things for the Ravens going forward. Certainly, they're going to have to. Hey, I'll tell you this: if Jacoby Jones does not leave that game, I think that things could have been different in the second half. All right, they got the injury to Michael Orr in that game. They had to bring in the rookie from Wisconsin, the rookie Rick Wagner. He was not very good. They've got some issues in terms of depth along the offensive line. The two guys that they've got, Dixon and Dallas Clark, who were trying to fill in for Pitta, did not look good. Clark, I tell you, the complexion of the game, again, a couple different moments. The Jacoby Jones injury, I thought, was devastating for them, because they are kind of thin at wide receiver. It gave the Broncos an opportunity to really lock down and take away a side of the field, I thought, with Flacco. But and then they had to put Marlon Brown, the undrafted rookie from Georgia, into the game. I thought he showed some promise. But you talk about momentum shifts in that game. If you look, that drive that the Ravens had at the end of the second quarter going into the half, they settled for the field goal, the Justin Tucker field goal. I think it was a 25-yarder, if memory serves me correctly. But here's Clark, who's got a touchdown in his hands seconds before the half, and the Ravens are ready to go up 7. Instead, he drops the ball, Dallas Clark does, and the Ravens have got to settle for a 25-yard field goal from Justin Tucker, and it's a 3-point lead going into the half instead of a 7-point lead. But and as far as the Broncos are concerned, I think that they got into a rhythm in the second half. Manning, with the no-huddle offense, was getting it going. He was using the whole field. He was getting pretty good protection, and the Broncos had the better of it. I mean, they had the big play on special teams. They scored in the red zone. They allowed the fumble or the muff on the punt by Welker set the Ravens up for that second touchdown. And so all in all, I think that you don't put too much into the first game. I'm not trying to put too much into it from a Broncos standpoint. And the same thing with with Baltimore. There's just too many good players on that team that I think the Ravens are going to be heard from because, look, Flacco was good in the first half, not as good in the second half. But when you've got Flacco and you've got Ray Rice and you've got Bernard Pierce and you've got, look, I thought that Torrey Smith was kind of taken out of the game. That's the point I was making before. Once Jacoby Jones went out of the game, I thought that the Broncos got an opportunity to really kind of take away that half of the field because they doubled up on Torrey Smith, and it really kind of limited Flacco. They got behind, so they abandoned the run game. And but there's too many good players on that team. I thought, Terrell Suggs played well last night. Nalati Hoda played well last night. I thought that Doomerville he was okay. But, again, you don't put too much into it. 49-27. And I thought that the score was kind of blown out of proportion by the fact that Baltimore, I think as they entered the fourth quarter, I think that they had one foot on the airplane back to Baltimore at that time. So, both teams go back to the drawing board here. Baltimore more than the Broncos, and we see what happens the rest of the way. And we got a full slate of games coming up this Sunday. I'm going to touch on some of these games going forward. Kaplan, do we have a guest, by the way, on the show coming up today?
We do. New York Times media columnist Richard Sandomir coming on final hour.
Well, you know how much I love talking about the sports media. And Richard Sandomir is coming on, and this is a guy that collaborated with. If you read the book on ESPN that came out about 2 years ago, James Andrew Miller was one of the co-authors of that book. And he collaborated with, wasn't that the name of that book, Those Guys Have All the Fun?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Richard Sandomir, who covers sports media for the New York Times, and James Andrew Miller got together, and they wrote a terrific three-part series on ESPN moving forward with some very interesting stuff in there. So I figured it would be a good idea to reach out to Richard Sandomir, so we'll do that later in the show. I'll get your phone calls in the mix as well, 866 and 522-2846. 866-522-2846. Has Johnny Manziel told Kevin Sumlin, by the way, has he told him that he's just not interested in playing the game against Sam Houston State at Kyle Field coming up this weekend? Has he told him that yet? Well, he should. I mean, and I hope that Johnny Manziel did tell someone at some point between when Sumlin went after him on the sidelines last week and today that the next time that someone gets up in his face like that and tries to publicly embarrass him and then goes on national TV with that dope Tom Luganville from ESPN in the aftermath of that win that Texas A&M had last week to open up the season against Rice, and again goes after Johnny Manziel. I was hoping that Manziel would tell Kevin Sumlin if he ever tries to pull that shit on him again, that Manziel will leave now. That, you know what, try to win the SEC, try to get back to a bowl game, try to, all the buzz and everything that's going on with Texas A&M, try to do it with Matt Jokel at quarterback instead of Johnny Manziel. And interestingly enough, concerning Manziel, and it is the second week of the college football season, I'm going to be getting into that as well here today before I'm through. But the story on CBSSports.com today by national sports columnist Greg Doyle, who's been on my show many times here over the last 5 years, starting to see some blowback, apparently, concerning the massive criticism that Manziel is undergoing with all of the national media. If you look at ESPN, if you listen and watch ESPN, you would almost think that ESPN has made it their personal mission to do everything within their power to try to take down Johnny Manziel. And the hyperbole and the manufactured rage or the manufactured outrage that has been going on across this country. It's almost like when you talk about the Johnny Manziel situation, it's almost like the media has been given a script. You going to talk about Johnny Manziel on your radio show here today? Yeah, here it is. What is this? This is a script, talking points. This is what you do. Look, we got a million things here. Take down Johnny. And we've provided you with a packet of information concerning some things you can say about Johnny Manziel. You going to write a story on Johnny Manziel in your newspaper? Yeah, here. What is this? It's a script. There are more talking points on what you can say about Johnny Manziel. We're trying to take him down. So Doyle today in his story, CBSSports.com, headline, overwrought media make Johnny Manziel a sympathetic figure. See, and I would disagree with this a little bit. I don't believe that just now Johnny Manziel is becoming, I mean, if you want to refer to him as a sympathetic figure, I don't think it's just happening now. I don't think it's happening in the last 24, 48, 72 hours. I think that Johnny Manziel, I think the bulk of the overwhelming majority of those who know who Johnny Manziel is, who love, and who have been following the Johnny Manziel thing ever since he burst upon the scene out of left field, out of the blue last year, and was the most scintillating property in college football, and who have followed Johnny Manziel ever since then, and winning the Heisman last year and beating Alabama in Tuscaloosa and winning the bowl game and coming into the season, I think instinct allows me to think that it's not just in the last little bit that the overwhelming majority of people who follow college football have been on Johnny Manziel's side. I think from the drop here, from the jump, people have been on Johnny Manziel's side. I think from the jump, people have known that the media has been going after Johnny Manziel with daggers, over the top in their criticism. I think that most of the people in this country, even though the media has worked in concert with each other, whether it's print media, broadcast media, whatever, they have choreographed this. They have worked in unison and in concert with one another. We're going to bury Johnny Manziel because you know what? People want us to bury Johnny Manziel. And you know what? We're really not affected by Johnny Manziel. I mean, it doesn't mean a rat's ass. We could care less. We don't give a rat's ass about Johnny Manziel, what he does, how he does it, and all that other stuff. But it makes for good copy. And you know something? Let's sit there smugly, because this is a kid out of Texas who's rich, comes from money. He's white. He's Christian. Perfect target. And people have criticized me in the past because I've said, listen, if Johnny Manziel were black, if Johnny Manziel were any other color than white, then the hyperbole, if you want me to use that word, the criticism, the over-the-top condemnation of Johnny Manziel, since Johnny Manziel has been so out of control, allegedly, that it would be not even a quarter of what it's been if Johnny Manziel was not a white kid, comes from money, out of the state of Texas, and is the Heisman Trophy winner. I think that Johnny Manziel, if he was anything other than white, wouldn't be receiving anywhere near the kind of criticism that he's been getting ever since he's become public enemy number one. And as I said before I started doing morning sports talk radio here across North America and around the world on Sirius XM Sports Zone Radio, and by the way, it's Sirius 92 and XM 208, I have maintained all along that Johnny Manziel is a kid that it's too easy to go after him. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. And I'll tell you another thing about Johnny Manziel, that I'm not sure if Johnny Manziel would be getting as much criticism as he's been getting if he wasn't playing in the SEC. See, I think if Texas A&M was still in the Big 12, I think Johnny Manziel would still be coming under the unfair criticism from all quarters. But I think if he was playing in the Big 12 or any other conference outside of college football's premier conference, the SEC, I think that the criticism would be slackened a bit if he was not playing in the SEC. But that's neither here nor there right now. Texas A&M is playing Sam Houston State a week after beating Rice at home. And I don't know if this game is going to be widely distributed on television. Someone, Mr. Joshua, was it you that told me that the game is going to be on some sort of pay-per-view? You got to pay, what is it? How much? $39 to watch the game. Okay. What is the only reason to watch this game? The only reason to watch this game is the quarterback, is number 2, is Johnny Manziel. I mean, otherwise, why would – I mean, we're all waiting for the game Texas A&M and Alabama in a few weeks. I mean, we're not waiting to watch Texas A&M and Johnny Manziel play Sam Houston State tomorrow. But the point that I wanted to make about the Doyle column today is Doyle said that he went on a national sports radio show not named the DINO in the morning show not too long ago, and he said that Johnny Manziel has been acting like a, quote, spoiled little douchebag. And he writes that Texas A&M fans went nuts. He writes that they found his phone number. They called his phone number until he had to change it. They made Twitter miserable for him. He said he deserved it. He deserved the backlash, the blowback from Texas A&M fans because he, in his words, in Greg Doyle's words, He says he overreached. He went too far. Well, to me, that is an excellent starting point for the entire group of media across this country. I don't care if they're national. I don't care if they're electronic or print media. I don't care if they're local talk show hosts, regional talk show hosts, bloggers, whatever. They have tried to set the tempo and the pace concerning how people feel about Johnny Manziel. And despite the fact that they have stopped at nothing to try to make people come to this feeling that Johnny Manziel is a demon, I don't think it's worked. I don't think it's come close to working. I think most of you who think about Johnny Manziel as an incredibly exciting football player who's being railroaded here by a media that is completely and totally out of touch. I mean, you got last week, the words coming out of Lou Holtz's mouth. You know, the contempt that he holds for Johnny Manziel was laughable. Laughable. This is Lou Holtz, who's been in a few hot water situations in his coaching career. And then there's Mark May, another guy who wants to lecture Johnny Manziel. I didn't know this about Mark May, but as a college football player when he played at Pitt, I didn't know this until I read Doyle's story on CBSSports.com this morning. I didn't know that when Mark May was a college football player at Pittsburgh, he was found guilty of criminal mischief and disorderly conduct. And the latest to jump on the Manziel, we gotta kill him bandwagon is none other than, and you want to talk about this being rich, okay? Barry Switzer. Barry Switzer is the do I have to say anything else? When I mentioned, you want to talk about Barry Switzer during the days he was leading the Oklahoma Sooners as one of the most outlaw programs that college football's ever known? Who are these people to sit in judgment of Manziel? Who are they? Despite being flawed and ineffective people in some quarters during their own careers in the arena of college athletics. But I save my most damning criticism for the guy that's on the sideline at Texas A&M. And I tell you, prior to last weekend, I had a healthy respect for Kevin Sumlin. A healthy respect for him. I thought what he did at Houston was terrific. He takes the job at Texas A&M. I thought I thought this guy, and he probably still is one of the young up-and-coming coaches that, you're going to hear from Kevin Sumlin over the years. But Sumlin, I lost a tremendous amount of respect for him last week because of what he pulled on Manziel. Of course, suspended for the first half. Ridiculous in and of itself, the suspension. I mean, come on. I still don't know what rule Johnny Manziel broke. I even read the bylaw of the rule he allegedly broke, or the NCAA bylaw. It still doesn't make any sense to me up to this very second. But, okay, we're going to sit Manziel last week for a half. He comes in second half, and he throws a couple touchdown passes and gets into it with a few guys on the Rice team who were chirping in his ear, of course, trying to get under his skin. And Manziel, what does he do? He points to the scoreboard. He says, hey, guys, look up. Turn around. Look at the scoreboard. Manziel's not going to conform. Manziel's going to speak his mind. And why shouldn't he? Okay, so he comes back to the sideline, and in as the environment now on television has shifted dramatically, and the ESPN announcers are just, I mean, you would have thought, my goodness, the unpardonable sin that he just doesn't get it, as though, and I said this on my show last week, as though Johnny Manziel is the first player to be involved in trash talking in this era that we've seen in the last 50 years of the stylistic individual athlete. Nike builds their entire image around trash talking on many levels. Under Armour does the same thing. We must protect this house. You've had players over the years, college players, pro players, both, involved in trash talking, pointing at scoreboards, getting into it with other players. You would have thought this never happened before, And all of a sudden, Manziel's involved in this. He gets an unsportsmanlike penalty because the referee throws the flag. We find out after the game that the Rice player admitted that he started the whole thing. Manziel comes off the field. And who's the first player to see him? His head coach, Kevin Sumlin. The same Kevin Sumlin who got $1 million extra placed in his pocket after last season's successful season for Texas A&M, due in every part to Johnny Manziel's spectacular season. $1 million. Not 100,000. Not five. $1 million bonus placed in Kevin Sumlin's pocket. Why did Kevin Sumlin get that bonus? I think that Kevin Sumlin is smart enough to recognize and to acknowledge that the reason he got that $1 million bonus was because of the player that wears number 2, that lines up under center for his offense. You know, the kid who won the first ever kid to win the Heisman Trophy as a freshman. Does someone ask Johnny Manziel, hey, John, what happened down there? John, you okay? What happened? I mean, I'm aware. I'm Kevin Sumlin, and I'm aware. And I'm cognizant of what this kid has done, not only for me, but for my football program. Without last season, is the intense interest in Texas A&M, is it going on right now? Is Kevin Sumlin the hotshot, young, rising coach in the ranks that he is without Johnny Manziel's season last year? Hell no. So Johnny Manziel has not only helped Kevin Sumlin out from a fiscal standpoint, but he's helped the entire Texas A&M university in terms of recruiting, in terms of admissions, and certainly in terms of monies generated. Now, I won't get into the whole thing about, Johnny Manziel not being able to take advantage of his fame. And it's not just Johnny Manziel. In this present day, it's every college athlete should be able to sign autographs for money if somebody wants to pay them. To become a spokesman for Dodge Ram trucks. If Dodge Ram trucks wanted to approach Johnny Manziel and say, Johnny, come on, hey, I'll give you a truck to drive around in, and we want to sign you up to a $10 million deal this year to make commercials for Dodge trucks. We won't get into that. I mean, there's plenty of time to do that. But let's admit, if we're Kevin Sumlin, that you jumped Johnny Manziel on the sidelines. And as I said on my show last week on another channel, Johnny Manziel is a better man than me at his young age. Because I would have told Kevin Sumlin right then and there, you ever pull this shit on me again, and you can try to win a national championship or fill up Kyle Field or have interest in your football program without me. Okay? But that wasn't even enough for Kevin Sumlin. Then after the game ends, he goes on ESPN with Tom Luganville, and he destroys the same guy that is so responsible for the monies that are in Kevin Sumlin's pocket yet again. Yet again. Something that's just, to me, fundamentally flawed here in this relationship. Now, it's not like last night, by the way, where if you watch the Broncos and the Ravens game, the Danny Trevathan thing, he intercepts Joe Flacco, brings the ball back for what he thought was a touchdown. But in the stupid-ass move maybe of this entire year that we saw in the first game of the NFL season here last night, he drops the football, starts celebrating before he crosses the goal line. And in the process, by the way, he gets probably the Broncos, arguably their most important defensive player, Wesley Woodyard, injured on the play. But anyway, he goes to the sideline. NBC goes to a commercial, of course, later, and they come back and they show you the sideline confrontation, Jack Del Rio screaming at Trevathan. And here's Trevathan giving Del Rio lip back. I don't want anybody to think that I'm not aware of the coach-player relationship and the chain of command and the flow chart and so on and so forth. I clearly am aware of it, and I've got great respect for it. You may be thinking, if you hear me talk about Manziel, well, Dino doesn't have any respect for the head coach, the coordinator. No. It's not that. It's about having context. It's about having perspective. One situation can be clearly different from the other. The way that Manziel was approached by his head coach last Saturday, and when you think about what went into all of that and the way that Jack Del Rio, the Broncos defensive coordinator, went after Trevathan after his dickhead move last night, I thought that Del Rio was completely within his right to tell Trevathan to shut the hell up and go sit on the bench. He doesn't want to see his face anymore, at least until practice a couple days from now. But here's Trevathan giving lip back to Del Rio last night? You've got to be kidding me. I mean, if Manziel walks into someone's office today, says to him, you know what, Coach, I just don't think I'm going to play tomorrow. I mean, after all, it is Sam Houston State. Jokel, he needs some reps. Why don't you play him again? You know, I've been invited to 3 parties tonight here in College Station. I don't know what time I'm getting in. Look, it's all, again, it's about perspective. It's about context. It's about recognition of who Manziel is, what he is responsible for, purely responsible for, not indirectly, but directly responsible for, in terms of Texas A&M, their football program, the attention the university's getting, admissions, recruiting, monies generated through television deals, the expansion of the stadium, season tickets, all that stuff. Let's understand something if you're Kevin Sumlin. The only reason that all of this is going on, the only reason all of this is permitted is because of one young man named Johnny Manziel, who wears number 2. And if not for him, the fruits of the labor that you've been putting in since you've been the Texas A&M head coach wouldn't taste nearly as delicious as they have felt ever since last year. 866 and 522-2846, 866-522-2846. This is Dino in the Morning. Show number 2, the final show this week, Sirius XM Sports Zone Radio, Sirius 92, XM 208, first break on a Friday. The 4-hour fun ride goes until 11 o'clock on the East Coast, and, of course, that's 8 o'clock out on the West Coast. I'm back with more great stuff, I promise, right after this. Got a big series starting this weekend coming up between the Cardinals and the Pirates. Give the Reds a lot of credit taking 3 or 4 from the Cardinals, gaining a little momentum coming in to this weekend. They've got a series coming up with the Dodgers, Cincinnati does. But give the Reds a lot of credit. And the Yankees last night with an absolutely awful loss. I mean, that went from one of the best wins that the Yankees had this year to one of their worst losses and a deflating, dispiriting loss to the Red Sox. The Red Sox were on the precipice of, now the Red Sox, of course, are playing with you know, a lot more of a cushion, being that they're up by several games in the American League East, so they could have afforded the loss much more than the Yankees last night. But the Yankees were on the verge of a tremendously satisfying, inspirational win. And the Red Sox, a very bad loss. It turned around, and the Red Sox with a terrific win after blowing the lead, and the Yankees with really what could be considered to be a crushing loss, especially concerning the fact that the Yankees, and you take into consideration that the Angels beat Tampa Bay 6-2 last night. The Yankees are chasing the Rays for one of those wild card spots, and that was a bad loss for the Yankees, and I'll get into that as we roll forward. Some baseball talk coming up. Richard Sandomir, who covers sports media for the New York Times in a terrific 3-part series that he combined with James Andrew Miller last week concerning ESPN, as I'll get into some sports media issues and items on the show here today. Now, and again, let me get back to Manziel again, because somebody tweeted me, check my Twitter between the timeout and just getting back now. You got to treat everybody the same, according to this guy. So you can't bullshit, okay? You want to talk about a naive, and you want to talk about an unreasonable, and probably even more so an unrealistic way to look at things. You know, I'm here to tell you that Kevin Sumlin has got to recognize, first of all, he comes off the field last week, and can Sumlin please ask him what happened instead of jumping him like he did? That's number one. Number two, this notion that you treat everybody the same, not only is this ridiculous and absurd in the world of sports, it's ridiculous and absurd in every walk of life. Is the top salesman for Apple Computer treated the same as the guy who brings in a quarter of what he does? Of course not. Is Mariano Rivera treated the same as Austin Romine, the catcher, one of the catchers with the Yankees? Is Derek Jeter treated the same as Lyle Overbay? Is Peyton Manning treated the same with the Broncos as defensive lineman Mitch Unrein? I mean, what is this? I mean, what world do you live in here? You got to treat everybody the same. No. You don't treat everybody the same. Okay? And you a coach may want to come out. Okay, Belichick might want to come out. And he would never do this, of course, and say, well, Tom Brady's just like everybody else on this football team. The hell he is. The Yankees back in the day, Stengel might have said, well, I treat Joe D just like I treat everybody else. No, you don't. No, you didn't. No, you don't. Pat Riley back in the day didn't say, Magic Johnson's just one of 12 guys on this team, and Magic, we treat him just like everybody else. No, you don't. Nor should you. So should Johnny Manziel be treated the same? Well, I mean, in theory, yes. I mean, outwardly, your projection to the public, to the media, to the fan base, to the boosters, okay, but everybody would know. I mean, if Kevin Sumlin said, I treat Johnny just like I treat all other 97 guys on this football team, the answer, he'd be lying. It'd be an out-and-out lie. The best at what they do. Is Howard Stern treated the same at Sirius XM as I am? Of course not. Nor should he be treated the same. Is the best police officer in that department, who's had all kinds of medals and awards, is he treated the same as everybody else? No, he's not. Nor is the best fireman, the best sanitation worker, the best salesman. And as far as baseball is concerned, will people let this Ryan Braun thing go, please? What is Ryan Braun doing? Did you see this? He's calling Brewer season ticket holders now. By the way, is Mark McGuire, is he working the phone lines after Dodgers games as their hitting instructor? Is he calling fans in St. Louis? Is he apologizing to and Mark McGuire, who of course took part in one of the greatest charades that baseball's ever known? Is Mark McGuire, is he calling people in St. Louis for all the years he played there? When's the last time he spoke to the Maris family, by the way? Is he apologizing to them? I get into this. Hey, Ryan Braun, do yourself a favor, and I can't stand when people do this. Stop beating yourself up so much. You're flesh and bones. You are flawed. You are defective. You are sinful. You are prone to make mistakes. And lastly, when it comes to Ryan Braun, you are far, far from being alone. If Ryan Braun's going to start making phone calls to Milwaukee Brewers season ticket holders, where is it? There it is. I got it right over here. Hold on. See this? This is the list. I got a list here. It goes back about 20 years. Got a lot of other players who need to, let their fingers do the walking and start to talk to some people that they need to apologize to as well. 1 hour done. Dino in the morning, Sirius XM Sports Zone Radio, Sirius 92, XM 208. 1 done. That's the bad news. Great news. 3 to go. Keep it here.